Sally reached out to me on LinkedIn, and this is just one of those conversations that really gave a sense of serendipity and flow. You know, it's a really breath of fresh air when you meet somebody and they can just spill their way of seeing the world, and you can just look at it and be like, fuck yes, we are so aligned. So I would definitely recommend you check this one out. This is we cover a bunch of different topics around film, culture, climate change, futurism, a bunch of really interesting stuff. So without further ado,
one of my great interests in filmmaking is to be able to make films and series or whatever format that could make people believe for a moment that things could be completely different, that there's actually a possibility. And it's also because not only stories it's not only because our brain is designed to believe stories as if they were happening, even though we know they're fake, we still can be so moved emotionally as if they were real. We have that our brain allows us to really get into a story so that we can learn that lesson emotionally, so that we can really, I don't know what's the word, but really as if you were there, you
like
know?
embody it almost. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And that mechanic, that system that our brain does, this is for us to profoundly learn lessons, not only hear them or see them or understand them in a rational level, but to really feel things so that we can learn from those experiences. And so the same way that I feel that we can cry, that we can feel moved, that we can feel like sometimes you watch these movies about, you know, politics and social movement, and you feel so suddenly, so you believe something different is possible.
Yeah, right.
To try to go more there and trying to create, even if it's just for a bit of time, that sense that something different is possible and is believable.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I really resonate with that part of what are the stories that we're telling ourselves, what is it that we tell ourselves that the world is.
Yeah.
And another thing that's very important for me in the matter of imagination is, how can I think differently about the world that we're living in? I feel like, for example, science fiction is my favorite genre because I am allowed to create the rules of a new world. And in that way, I can investigate, I can go into proposing something that is really new, or at least some part of the story is completely new, and then the rest will be something that resonates. I think that is fascinating, and that is something that I am personally exploring a lot in my work, and is my main interest really in making film. You know, I've been in co-workings, I've been in creative communities, I've been in, you know, kind of, yeah, I'm in asociaciones, how do you say this? You know, it's not like an NGO, but it's a little smaller, and it's for non-profit, and people get together to fix something or to speak about some issue. And I've been part of that, and I'm really big into working in a community. And at the same time, I've lately seen so many flaws about that system. I feel that for I don't want to think like that, but I'm in this phase what I see, for example, in activism in Spain, when we try to work together and people are at the same level and everybody have an opinion and we decide everything as a community, everything goes very slow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of egos at fight, and there's a lot of issues all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel also that in activism, more than anything, we're getting into a system that doesn't work, and that, you know, just complaining about things doesn't work. And I even think that the system wants us to keep complaining about things so that people don't actually do something about it, just complain about it. There's I feel there is a lot to be still experimented within community, so that communities could be very effective, because I see that in co-working spaces, Like I've been in one working space here that is very not only about renting a desk, but really knowing everybody and trying to create connections between everybody and give all sorts of opportunities to
Where,
mix match.
where is this?
Barcelona.
Oh, Barcelona. Oh, cool. Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
nice.
It's MOB,
Oh,
MOB.
oh, MOB. Yeah,
Know
yeah,
them?
yeah. No, totally. I went to one of their opening nights
Yes.
actually.
I went to Portugal 2 years ago and
Mm,
I met this incredible guy. He's a Palestinian director and
mm,
he developed a technique over 8 years of work
right.
to work with non-actors. And
Okay.
he made a film like that.
Mm,
And basically, he taught us the technique that he was using in 2 days, so just superficially. But
right.
one of the things that you do before anything else is do physical stuff so that everybody would not be as self-conscious.
Mm,
So just very stupid things like everybody in a group and you're going to make the sound of a machine that you have at home and we have to find out what it is. You know,
right.
it's like stupid games that will make it losing up, you know, listen a little more to each of the people who are there in the space and just be freely together so that
Right.
you stop being so self-conscious about who you are or what you're going to say or what is your persona, how you're going to present yourself, because now we're all silly, we're all stupid. I see you do noises, you saw me doing noises, and then everybody's much more ready to play. That's
Yeah.
how we did it. Now we left our brains, you know, and at the door, and now we're ready to play and be ourselves and be much more open, so to say. So,
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. That sounds like a great technique.
oh yeah, he's amazing. He's really like this imagination that I was telling you that allows us to know that something is not real and feel it as if it was real at the same time. That's what he uses to direct non-actors.
Okay, like getting them into the space that they need to be to really believe who they are.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. To really believe, even though you know it's fake, really believe what is happening in the scene that you're in.
Cool. Interesting. This is
Yeah.
kind of generating a bit of insight for me at the moment, just in the idea of acting something until it's real. You know what I mean? Like getting people to enter into a space in which some belief is there and they are sort of just performing it, but in that performance, it makes, it's almost being able to break that cycle in the same way of believing it and then acting into it, and then that reinforces it. And as long as everyone is doing it, then it kind of it might work as a temporary thing where you're just like, oh, that's weird. I felt like it was like this, where it gives a certain mindset shift. Do you know what I mean? To sort of tap you into.
It gives you, imagine giving somebody a character that is the contrary to what they usually are.
Ooh, yeah,
And
right.
you have to experiment the world from this other perspective. And at some point, of course, there'll be some resistance, but if you get really into that mental space, you can actually feel things and see things that you haven't felt before. I do feel I do this, but I don't do it thinking so much like that. I do it, and he goes, and I love my secrets. I interview myself, for example.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. So last week I was doing a very intensive course. We're writing a pilot in 2 weeks for a series. And I had to really figure out a scene that was the most important scene of the pilot that I didn't thought I would have to put in the pilot, but then an executive from the BBC said to me, no, it has to be in the pilot. I was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do now? And so I went grocery shopping. In the car, I asked myself as an interview, Sally, how did you come up with this idea of the scene where these two women talk? I'd be like, oh, you know. I started speaking and I had the idea. I found it. So I interview myself as if I knew already what the scene was.
Yeah, right. Okay. Ooh, that's interesting. Almost kind of like doing it, almost looking at it from in the past of just like, oh, how did you
Yeah,
come up with that? Oh, well, I just, it just came.
exactly. I'm always interviewed or at the Oscars or at the Emmys, one of the two.
That's
Somebody comes
cool.
and says, Sally, please tell me, how did you come up with
How did
this
you
thing?
get there? How did you manage to do that bit that was just out of the world, but just you couldn't?
Exactly. And it's insane, but it works.
That's awesome.
So I
Shit.
put my place, I put myself in a place where I already know the answer. And I just ask myself, Sally, what's the answer from there? Because I'm not there yet.
Yeah,
But tell
yeah,
me
yeah.
which one it is.
That's interesting. That's
And it's
interesting. So kind
like,
of like placebo effect of
yeah,
generating insight. The idea
yeah.
is that essentially you're curating customized teams for any project, basically. So this is where the agency side comes in, is because that's going to be our sort of core offering to clients, is that we would have some of the best creatives, because we're offering a way for them to work towards something that is purpose driven and is something that completely utilizes all of their capacities and interests, and doesn't pigeonhole them into, oh, you need to do this thing or that thing or whatever. It's actually able to bring all of their talents to the table, and then being able to actually pair them up into these really um, highly perfected groups that are able to create something together. So it's not only for commercial projects, but it's also for collaborations between each other as well. So it would be feeding in the same information of something you might do between each other, but using that same information to be able to really understand something for a commercial project and vice versa.
Mm.
And also apply the same thing for co-living. So this is kind of one aspect in which I'm really paying attention to at the moment, because there's a huge opportunity at the moment now where there's lots of people that are living in cities that are paying pretty crazy rents to be in these environments that really don't have anything going for them at the moment, because they just keep getting locked down. There's no events going on.
Yeah.
They have the same needs as me, basically, and really we can be curating these customized houses in which they can be living and working around each other, and we can essentially be the middleman between some of these vacant properties that would usually be used for the tourism industry that is pretty much dead.
Mm.
So it's kind of like being able to match these things together and just focus on the people curation side of it, where we can be saying, okay, look, well, you can come to an online event, you can network in a very new format, in a way in which it uses more kind of spatially orientated methods of communicating. It brings back some of that serendipity, and then we sort of basically go through a bit of a filtering process to find out the kind of people you want to live with, put you into a
Mm.
group, take care of everything else. We'll give you a couple of options, but I'm going to focus on like one country for the time being, and then set you up in that place that you can go and work there for say 3 months or whatever. Which I see as being a huge thing that loads of people are going to be looking for coming out of this
Yeah.
pandemic, or even now. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah. Already.
very
Yeah.
current. One of the things I see as being really important is for us to create, and this sounds this was what kind of most resonated with what you were saying, sort of perfectly painted images of our potential futures, giving something that people can tangibly get around, with a storyline like weaved into it, where people can see a future in which they haven't seen before, but the narrative itself just brings that different mindset. It allows them to like step out of the way in which things are done now and imagine something that's actually a lot more designed. Kind of like white mirror, almost something that
Yeah.
shows a potential for us to move towards.
Mm. There's something that came to my mind. I did well, I'm addicted to online courses. That's like
Cool.
my hobby.
Okay, nice.
And at the beginning of the lockdown, I found this course on Future Learn, which is this
Cool.
British
Okay.
platform. They have a huge amount of things. And there was a course from one of the Australian universities, and it was about leading multicultural teams.
Okay, cool.
And don't ask me why, but I thought, this sounds interesting. It has nothing to do with what I do.
Okay.
It's very, company oriented and things like
Okay.
that. But yeah, I was super curious, and
Mm,
and it was amazing. And
really?
I've been able to subtract so much information,
Mm,
and I found a new language to speak about things that I was speaking in diversity concerning film,
okay, cool.
which was really awesome. But
Mm,
basically, what made me think about this, what you were saying, is there's a big difficulty in working. In this course, it was about different cultures and different countries,
mm,
teams of different countries, and multicultural teams being able to work together,
yeah.
which seems to be a really huge difficulty for companies to
Right.
make it work. So
Wow.
they were talking about, for example, Heineken, which is a Dutch company, having workers from all the places,
Yeah.
who suddenly they had, I think, like a section boss that was Mexican or something like that.
Okay.
You know, things didn't work out because
Yeah.
Mexico is a very strong hierarchy. So your
Yeah.
boss is like untouchable, and in the
Right.
Netherlands the hierarchy is way less. Like you can talk to your boss the same way that you would talk to anybody else in the team.
Uh-huh.
So you will have all these culture shocks in between people.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I think when you're speaking about teams and being able to offer a company a solid team that works together,
Yeah.
it's such a huge offer to make because it's so difficult to make people who are very different or who bring very different value to one project to being able to work together.
Right.
And it's like something that I think more and more people are going to be looking for, companies are going to be looking for, because it's so difficult to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, I really loved how the course was organized, because the last part of the course basically said the best people to lead multicultural teams are multicultural people.
Mm.
So have
Yes.
mixed race people in your teams, because
Right.
they're the only ones who've experienced the world from many different ways since they're kids, that
Yeah.
they have this ability to be able to understand everybody, and even people they don't know, they will find a way to try to understand something that they don't understand
Right.
because they've been raised that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, the superpower I didn't know
Yeah.
I had. But and I don't lead teams, so that's okay. But I
Not
mean, when I
yet.
should, but that's good. Um, but I found that very, very interesting, and it made me think
Mm.
again. Activism, working in teams,
Yeah.
how difficult it is, how
That's
really
cool.
difficult it is, and
Mm.
to teach people to communicate in certain ways, and to be very mindful of other people's understanding of the world.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and that is very, like, that makes me think about my mom a lot. My mom is from Equatorial Guinea,
Mm.
and I think until I was 30,
Mm.
almost like
Yeah.
4 years ago, I didn't realize how we spoke the same language, but we
Yeah.
didn't say the same things.
Okay.
Like some words didn't mean exactly the same thing. It didn't have the same connotations for
Mm.
me and for her. And that led to a lot of misunderstandings.
Interesting.
you
Yeah.
know and if
Yeah.
that happens with a mother, imagine what can happen with somebody you don't know, you've never seen before.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really, really a big deal. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Characters, not the protagonist, another character in the story would write to the world.
Mm. Okay.
And when I did that, I realized this is a bigger story. I saw the world from the other character, and I was like, oh my God, this story is huge.
Oh.
And I only know the pilot, but now I know, because I put myself on the shoes of another character,
Mm.
that there's a bigger world around this story.
Oh,
It was super
nice.
interesting, which is basically what I told you about interviewing myself. Is suddenly, if I see all of this from a different point of view, what could
Mm.
happen? And suddenly the idea exploded
Oof.
beyond what I could have imagined it being.
Mm.
And yeah, and that's what I've been pitching lately and speaking with people, and everybody's like very excited, but it has to be shot in the United States because it's the the history of the United States is about race, it's science fiction. It's the best to put this story in motion, kind to say.
Okay.
Yeah, basically the theme behind it is how, yeah, how the manipulation of history, the stories we tell ourselves, um, make the how we interact with each other in the world. So basically, it's in a future United States where there's only white people.
Okay.
They've never seen a Black person before, and they know nothing about their history of African Americans because it has been manipulated in such way that it doesn't really exist anymore.
Okay.
So it is, well, basically that United States of 250 years from now is governed by a female president that has 25 years old, because also if we don't mix with other races, our health deteriorates. So people don't live as long anymore in that future. They only live to 40, 45 years old.
Right. Okay.
And that is actually a real fact.
Wow.
And so she's never heard about a Black person before, knows nothing about the history of her country really. And the body of a Black woman is found, and she has to decide if they eliminate the body to maintain the purity of the right race, or if they use that body to save them, to use her DNA. But the big question is, where did this woman come from? And when the president sees the woman for the first time, she deeply falls in love with her. So she cannot make a purely rational decision about it.
Okay.
What is really interesting about the pilot is that they have to tell the story of the United States to the president because she doesn't know it. It's hidden from her.
Okay.
And as they tell her a very manipulated story, we are seeing the real images as they tell the story. So it's a comparison of what we're told with the images of what really happened. And at the end, when the president asks, this really happened, they're like, images don't lie. But actually, you can make images lie. You can make history lie.
Right, I see.
And we're showing that in one scene.
Also, you're showing images of a sort of alternative reality that they're telling the
No, the word is an alternative explanation to blacks in America.
And contrasted with actual images of what real history is.
Exactly. But actually, they are using those images to explain this history. Right. It's just the words are not, I mean, they don't speak about slavery. Yeah. They speak about workers' rights.
Okay.
They don't speak about, police brutality. They speak about necessary measures.
Right. Okay.
Now they paint this picture of words that suits the images, which are real, that we're showing, but just to show people what you think you know is not necessarily what it is.
Right. And you can take something that is proof, but within a different context, it can be proof of whatever it needs to be.
Exactly. It can prove whatever you want it to prove.
That's cool. That feels quite relevant as well, because I feel like we're in this place at the moment where we're, especially America, where it's like there's not that, it's like post-truth. It's that thing, that thing of really understanding what is even, we don't trust like studies to be able to even have an argument over anything. So it's
it's perfect for the post-Trump era, which is a time where anything is possible, any lie goes, and nothing is real necessarily. So I think it's a good time. But it comes really from my frustration that I feel like we are talking about a race problem from a now perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And we're never, like, I have that a lot here in Spain when I'm working, and people are like, you know, the same thing I told you before is, oh yeah, we have to be diverse because it's the right thing to be. And when people say, I don't understand why we need to make sure there are more Black people telling stories in Spain, I'm like, well, you know, it's not about today. Now, it's not just what's happening today. When you explain to people that Black people were not allowed to have a camera, were not allowed to tell their own stories, to the point that when cameras were brought to the African continent, it was forbidden for a Black person to have one until
No.
1957.
Right. Wow.
It's not about why can't we tell stories now and why we should fight for that. It's about how we've never been able to tell our own stories, and you don't know our stories from our perspective.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
From never ever,
Yeah.
because it wasn't possible, it was illegal. Right? So I think that what is missing for people to understand is the history behind everything that's happening today, and how that manipulation of stories, the biggest story of them all for me is Black people have no soul, right?
Right.
And that
Okay.
is the story that makes possible slavery.
Yeah. Right.
When the church says, yes, it's true, we signed here, Black people don't have soul, go enslave them. It's not until that is signed that enslavement is possible.
Yeah. Right.
So really, have we changed that much
Yeah.
since then?
Right. Totally. And that's the thing, is like it's an underlying, story that we tell
Yeah.
ourselves. You're right. It's only possible when we're able to do that mental leap of like, oh, but it's okay because of this. The story makes sense, and then that
Story makes sense.
right.
And it makes sense because a lot of people go about intuition. I have that a lot
Feels
also
right.
in
So
my
yeah.
questions. There are two great questions that I have in talks is, what about freedom of expression? Like, why do we have to correct the stereotypes if it's the freedom of expression to a director to tell whatever story they want? That is the big question that I get here.
Yeah.
And the other one is about, it just escaped me. You just said it.
Can't remember.
It's okay. It's okay. I lost my track of thought. I mean, something that helps me explain the difference of situation with Spain and other countries, there's not a single TV show, film, or any audiovisual content ever made in Spain with a Black protagonist.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am consulting on the first Netflix series that has a Black protagonist in it.
Really?
That
Wow.
is shot in Spain.
Shit. So you actually have to guide them through, we don't even have anything, right? Have any reference for this. Like, what does a Black protagonist even do? And I think
No, go ahead.
that's just one of the things that I think is most sort of is backwards about the whole, like some of the ways in which we go about fixing some of this stuff is like, it's this thing of like, well, we'll just put in we just make it so that people have to have a Black person in it, so that they have to, then we won't give them an award otherwise, or we'll do this or we'll do it. And I'm like what, like why do you think that's the issue? Like, you should be going to the root cause of like, why there are more Black people with fucking cameras, like in go to where it's important, go to where go to the unpaid internships that are just only select for the certain group of people regardless. Like, it's not just about like just putting them in a film and then something, but like,
I remember what we were saying is a matter of intuition. And that connects with a lot with the big problem, because it's not the great difficulty of entering the industry and telling these stories is that these stories, for the people who select who gets funding, who gets attention, who gets production companies, who
Mm.
gets the tools to be able to make those stories into films, those people, when you send them a story where from a different perspective, they have the intuition that that story is wrong.
Right. Interesting.
And
Yes.
I've had that a lot in competitions. When I send the script and I get a feedback saying,
They don't get it.
yeah, this perspective is not really interesting, or somebody who totally misunderstood the story,
Right.
or yeah,
Interesting.
they're
It's like they
like,
can't even, they're not even able to see it from that place,
no.
and not seen any stories like that anyway, so it just seems off. Wow.
And it's
That's
a matter
fascinating.
of, if I see all the time the same narrative, the same point of view, and that is how I learn what the world is. And suddenly I see something that goes in the opposite direction, or not even that, that it's just too strange,
Mm.
doesn't relate directly to what I've learned about the world, that thing is obviously wrong.
Right. Mm.
So why should I support this story? Why should I this or that? And obviously it's not everybody. I had great feedback, but I never had, until now that that I'm like a different place. But at the beginning, it was very, very frustrating
I bet,
because I
yeah.
felt so misunderstood, and I felt like sometimes, I don't kid you, and it's not a matter of ego, but I remember doing a competition here in Barcelona. I was selected with a film idea.
Mm.
And it was an award for the best pitch,
Mm.
right?
Right.
So I did the best pitch by far. Right.
Yeah.
People
There's
went
there's
there,
times where you just know that you nailed it and you just come
you
out.
know, and everybody, like every producer I talked with after that, told me, you did the best pitch by far. Like you had us right there. Like it was insane. And I didn't want
Right.
best pitch.
Right. Was there a second prize?
No. And everybody, I didn't even go because I knew I'm not going to win. And then everybody was like, where's Sally? Where's Sally? It's no need. She's not going to win because her
Uh-huh.
story is not the story we want to tell.
Uh-huh. Right.
And it was that thing. Imagine having to do that again and again and again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
Like at some point, you're like, am I crazy?
Yeah.
It's really that these stories don't matter at all, that nobody can really understand what I'm saying. Do I speak a different language?
Yeah.
Yeah, completely a different perspective.
Yeah.
And that is happening in so many places, and it's
Right.
so difficult to point at, because it's a
Yeah.
matter of intuition, it's a matter of personal opinion, it's a
Yeah.
matter of, it's the art. So it's like, yeah, I didn't
What's
see
right,
it.
what's wrong? Like there's
Yeah, that's
no.
why I was wrong.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah. And it is impossible to see it outside of that context as well. You know, it's something where if when it's the water that's all around, then it just
Mhm.
makes that whole thing very much more difficult to define and be like, this is the problem. You know, if you just go like, well, how many, black characters are there that are able to have a conversation with you, then you can count that. That's way
Yeah.
easier, right? How many have
Yeah.
we got in here? you know
Check.
Right, exactly. When you're saying like, no, the way in which you're even interpreting this story is what is the problem itself, and
Yeah.
by the way in which you only have, I think that is what is so fundamentally needed in that experimentation aspect, is being able to create a place in which these kind of stories can be told on a small
Mhm.
scale in some way that
Mhm.
is, doesn't need necessarily huge budgets, but is done in
Mhm.
a sort of in a manner in which it gets the point across, or it gets just enough to be able to get like a group of people that just go, fuck yes, this is, oh my god, this is a story I've been missing, you know what I mean, and
Yeah.
like are able to actually, so that's why I do quite like the idea of like short films, or just being able to create that hook that just like grabs people in, that little pilot
Mhm.
that just somebody just goes like, oh my god, this is what we've been missing, you know what I mean, and just
Mhm.
able to break through that, because those can then act as a platform for others to then be built upon, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and they can go like, oh, now we've got something that we can point to and go, that's to break the frame and then open that world of possibility.
Definitely.
And I feel like even some of the things we literally were just talking about in terms of going back to understand what we're missing, that's a really key concept that I think that I've been working on with this Game B, in the Game B space, is that we've been mentioned, it's come up time and time again, of that need to look back for reference, because we don't have a reference point. We don't have elders. That no one knows what the fuck they're doing. There are no adults in the room, and we need to go back to find what was once true, what was once a way of doing things, and what that mindset once was, so that we can learn from it. So I think what you're doing
I think it's like, how do I say this, is I think there is there's great potential in trying to see the world again before it was like it is now. Like, just the possibility to imagine that another way of human beings living together existed before this time, as if this is a phase instead of a destination. And things are not just like this, I listened to a podcast, I think it was a podcast or something, about how capitalism was created. And I was like, even though I know it has not been here forever, there is a sense that we all have that it is. Yes. And that is unmovable. Absolutely. And that is the only way possible. And hearing that podcast, just explaining the story of it and how it came to be and that, I was like, oh, so if it was made, it can be undone. And something else can come. Yeah. And I think it's so important to start putting people in that mindset. Because that's, again, something that really frustrates me. And I feel really alone in this. In activism, everybody wants to complain and fight the system. But how many people are creating the system we should move in? And there's something really interesting that also, I can send you the title of this book. It's pretty amazing in that sense of thinking differently. It's an afro-futuristic book with several different stories. It's called Octavius Broad. And at the beginning, the editors explained something that really made it very clear for me, which was, it was science fiction for some slaves in the States to believe that freedom was possible when everything around them was telling them it was not. Right. And that was the power of imagination. So the only way we can go somewhere different is we imagine it first. If we're fighting against something, but we're not imagining where we're going, we don't know where we're going, we're not going nowhere. Right? Right. And that for me is like, whoa.
Yeah. Big time.
Big time.
And that is what everyone is looking for right now. That is what is on everyone's mind. This is the most important thing that we need this century, is to be able to, because we are in the fog, this is the point in which we don't know where we're going. Like, we've put this year has just been a big fucking stop button, and then everyone's going, whoa, how did we stop this thing? This isn't, whoa, like what is there? We're like, we need to put it back together. It needs to get back up. We need to make sure, like, the economy, we gotta get it going. We gotta make the machine go again. And it's like, okay, but where were we going with this? Like, where was this machine going? Like, where was where was our destination? Because we don't have one. We haven't had one for a while, and we're in this place where, if we're gonna fucking start the machine again, we better fucking know where the fuck it's going, because otherwise it's going in the wrong fucking direction. Super
it's gonna crash.
and it's gonna crash half. Like this was a taste, and like
Yes.
no, and you know, and we know now, like the veil has been lifted. Like they're not in control. Like we're literally on our own, and we were on our own in March. You know, we had to fucking do it ourselves. We had to self-organize and sort each other out because we knew that the governments were not there to take care of us. And so it's in this place that we are now stepping into, in which, you know, we need to understand that no one is coming to save us. We have to save ourselves. Like there, you know, this is the time in which, you know, unless we start doing the things that are the difficult things, that are going to take courage, that are going to take stepping into the unknown, that are going to be, you know, carving a new path, that is going to be doing something that is hard and shit, and, you know, accepting that things are not going to be a fucking beautiful fairy tale with, you know, roses, and science is going to come and slap us in the fucking face, you know.
So that we can go back to normal.
Yeah.
What? I don't want to go back to normal. Please let me go from normal. No.
Yeah, what the fuck? So when like normal was
You
killing us, like, are
normal.
you fucking serious? Like, yeah,
No.
we're just gonna go back to injecting ourselves with heroin. That was normal, you know. It's like,
Yeah, exactly.
this is not sustainable. There's just no way. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is it. This is absolutely what we need. That's it. Mic drop.
Okay.